I've got a bunch of other locations lined up.
Hmm.
Definitely Jackfest. That's the Jackalope Freedom Festival. So, and I don't mind if that goes live.
Yeah, I think they need to find a new. Um, I think they need to find a new name for it. I mean, the Jackalope
Yeah.
Freedom Festival sounds good, but like, if you telling people, hey, that Chuck dude, I hear he's going over to Jackfest, it's like it's a little suspect, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Oh
Yeah.
man.
I mean, Pork Fest, at least people make pig jokes like, oh, you mean like
Sure.
pork and so. Okay, that's fine. Who
Yes.
cares? But
Right.
Jackfest is a little,
Yeah. Yeah. It's a surly reference.
yeah, that's where all the jack offs go, But
Right.
and that's the nicer thing you could say about it. But anyway, I got three people watching on YouTube, two different people in the um actual live chat of YouTube, which means yeah, we do have an audience, which is funny. Um, this guy, Daddy's here. I'm Satoshi. It's this guy who comments a lot. He goes by the Cryptsy Kid, which I just think is a funny name.
Hmm.
So yeah, so for everyone watching, everyone in attendance around the world, ladies and gentlemen, all that kind of stuff. Welcome to another edition of Friday. Happy it's Friday.
Happy
Not
Friday.
like it means anything for me because I'm busy / having fun all week long, but whatever. Yeah, yeah, you had to play the yay sound. Yeah, so I'm joined by a wonderful person. We're gonna get into that in just a second. Let me just roll the intro graphic because no one really cares about anything about that. And then yeah, then we'll just go right into stuff. All right, so hey everyone, I'm joined by the fantastic and only and one Charles Williams. I assume that you're Charles, right?
Yeah, that's my
Charles,
given name. I'm
Chuck,
I'm humbled to be, yeah, introduced in such a way. Yeah.
the Chuck Williams. Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to throw you under the bus. It was my fault. I was being late as usual. I like to run on Mexican time sometimes, and even whether or not I want to or not, sometimes it just happens. Sometimes the mood just strikes. So, you know, stuff happens. But
Hmm.
we have a great show ahead of us. First, do you want to say real quick? Um, you're going to be at Shitcoin, correct?
Yeah,
You
Shitcoin 2021.
do you want
Very
to just say what it is, where it is, and pump people up to try to go see you there?
Yeah, so I'm calling it. I mean, depending on how you look at it, I mean, it's happening in Miami. It's happening the day before the Bitcoin conference in Miami starts, which has
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of people on its own, right? Tony Hawk and the guy who owns Twitter and a bunch of other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's gonna be a whole huge wave of crypto folk coming into town, and this was kind of sprung up this shitcoin sister trolling conference because the organizers from the rumor mill, total
Of
rumor from
course.
what I hear, they had approached Bitcoin conference and said, "Hey, we want to be there on the floor," and they tried to do a sponsorship, and they apparently the organizers said, "No, we say Nieti," and said no Ethereum and no Ethereum projects on the floor at all, and it was a very maximalist tone, and so the organizers of shitcoin said, "All right, well, we'll just spin up our own conference and we'll do it right next to you, and we're going to troll you the whole time and steal away all your people," and that was the whole idea. So it was free up until recently. It's a $5 ticket compared to the 900 some dollar ticket if you want to get into the Bitcoin conference. So we want to get all the masses in for the shitcoin conference, and the title of my talk is going to be "Why Mass Adoption Needs Social Shitcoins." So very prominent thing
Oh,
right in
so
the.
you're going to become the successor to the Doge father.
I don't know about that, but
You
Float is a
see the
sponsor.
fear he's looking at over the shoulder. He's just like, oh no,
Um,
is Chuck my daddy now? Which that quote is going to be taken out of context a lot of times. Better believe
yeah,
it.
the Doge father.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, no, I'm really excited about that because it seems like an epic kind of moment to me. Like
Yeah.
this is something that's going to happen. The maximalism, I think, generally people who are outside of maximalism or are previous, recovering maximalists, kind of see that that's. I saw your video about the whole going the way of the dodo thing, and
Oh, thank
and
you.
and it just kind of echoes, what's happening, and shitcoin conference is like a very firm claim in the ground for, hey, we deserve to exist, kind of thing, and it's for the people.
I don't know. Like maximalism, I think like this year I'm starting to see those signs. And for anyone who hasn't watched, you can watch this short little video that I made that just says about has a picture of like Peter McCormack and Tone Vays' dinosaurs about to go extinct with the meteor and stuff. It's fun. But basically, yeah, it's an interesting year because we're starting to finally, the technology is starting to mature past Bitcoin. Like in the past, you know, Bitcoin did everything, and then you had a whole bunch of other coins that did what Bitcoin did with slightly different parameters, kind of. And then even like Ethereum, the first big, well, yeah, but mostly people just used Ethereum to kick out more tokens, which are more things that just do what Bitcoin does, right? There's a limited supply and they send and receive. And then, you know, ICOs and just whatever else it was. Now we're starting to see stuff that's like, oh, you mean you can live stream on this blockchain platform called Library. Oh, you can't do that anything remotely. That's not anything close to what Bitcoin does. Oh, it's like we can trade without an exchange because everyone just swapped on exchanges. It's like we use a decentralized exchange, a truly decentralized exchange, and it works. It's like, oh, you can't do that. And now, before you know it, just could be like all the old school, you know, only Bitcoin works people. It's gonna start to like evaporate, like how useful any of that is.
Yeah, well, and I think that the tip of the spear on that right now is I'm hearing people come to the crypto space from random locations like, oh, I own a, you know, unique edition basketball card on some website that's tied to a blockchain on the back end. Does that mean I have an NFT on crypto? Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's the tentacles of the fractalized niches of society are getting out there, and you know, the utility of things that are not Bitcoin are just landing in front of people's faces, and they're realizing, oh, this is crypto on the back end after the fact, after they've already acquired the asset or the property or the thing or whatever. Which I think is an interesting angle that is, I think, kind of a turning point in mass adoption in crypto utility.
Yeah, that's the ultimate flipperoo. The ultimate flippening is it used to be everyone you got hyped as you're using crypto, but you're not because you're on a
Right,
centralized exchange or whatever. You're not even touching the blockchain. And then
right,
now it's going to flip to you don't think you're using crypto, but you are.
right.
And
Yeah,
so that's
you don't
like
know it.
that's
It
the
just
mass
happens.
adoption flip.
Right. Yeah. We'll see. We're gonna adopt it because the utility is gonna be so cool and so awesome and change and so life changing.
Hmm.
We won't care how it runs on the back end, and it'll just happen to be crypto because crypto, it couldn't have happened without it because it needed the privacy and the security and the, you know, all of the stuff that comes with crypto to happen.
Yeah, I mean, also you got to start like using the chains, and that's the thing that I think is pretty interesting is people who just buy and hodl or whatever else, they don't understand how things work because they don't have to actually experience how things work. But like for example, I've been looking into Thorchain lately and basically being able to trade without using a centralized third party, but without wrapping your tokens either, like Ethereum and stuff does. And it looks cool. And then I'm starting to think like, oh, you mean like you think that network congestion is bad now? When people once in a while move them onto a big exchange, can you imagine if people are trying to send Bitcoin back and forth for every trade that they do now?
Right.
How
Yeah.
and then you're gonna see it and see how bad it is. And like so today, this is the big news of the day is I finally got my Lightning. At some point, I'm gonna do something about the saga. But the funny thing is after that, so I got a Lightning node, it was running, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna open up a channel so I can actually use it. So I had around $100, and opened up a channel with Umbrel, which is the service that I'm using anyway. Their big node. I just figure, oh, that's
Right.
got to be a well-connected node. And so then I have, $100 outbound capacity, but I have no inbound capacity. And the entire reason I started trying to do this node is so I could receive donations on this podcasty service that uses Lightning. And so, but I like literally, so I take $100, I open a channel, and I can receive 0. So
Huh.
because what you have to do is you have to have the other person you're connected to has to have the same amount, has to have some amount in the channel inbound to you in order for you to receive, right? So basically, in order to do it, what I spent all day doing, or no, I spent like half an hour in the afternoon, whatever, is I took my little like mobile lightning wallets, and
Hmm.
I was just sending lightning to them, like sending them out, because every time you push liquidity to the other side, you open up inbound capacity back. So
Okay.
basically, I had to push my $100 of balance through lightning, routing through the node to other stuff. So now I can receive $100 worth of stuff. So I had to
Oh,
like
interesting.
I'd like empty it out in order to put it back in. But I kept on getting like failed payments and stuff like that because, they
Yeah.
had routing issues and stuff. These are like two, the Breeze wallet and the Phoenix wallet. Phoenix wallet, of course, runs on the single most well connected node on the planet.
Mhm.
But somehow, somewhere on the route, there was some kind of like choke point that I could only do so much. So I had to
Well, I
send in
heard that's the
$3
problem.
increments. So I spent like three times what is 100, right? I just spending like all afternoon just like sending lightning here, sending here, sending here, sending here, just so I could have inbound capacity and receive funds. So
Wow.
that was my
Yeah.
day.
It's like you got to pave your digital roads.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Roads of
interesting.
theft.
Yeah, and I've heard that that's a problem because they gotta the onion layers are like they lag in terms of their relevancy,
Mm-hmm.
and so you could have a node drop off halfway through, right? And while your local data could say one thing, but that chain might not be good anymore, right? Because one of the
Mm-hmm.
nodes on the path has dropped off or something, and it's got to get rerouted. And I think it's like a continuous onion layering problem, right?
Yeah, it's funny because whenever I if I want to pay you, and so obviously in any network you cannot pay more than your entire balance unless you're the government or your bank and you overdraft or something. But like real money, we're talking real money. You can't pay
Mhm.
more than what you have, of course. That's
Right.
fine. But the
Yeah.
thing is, you can't pay more than the capacity of anyone you route through. So basically,
Right.
your capacity is the smallest capacity. Your
Exactly.
top
Yeah.
capacity is the
Ah,
smallest capacity.
okay. So it's the herd is only as fast as its slowest member mentality.
Yes. But here's the thing. That's not just like, oh, so I have $100, but I'm trying to route, let's say I have 1,000, but the
Hmm.
lowest person there is $100. So I can only send $100 payment. That's like the smallest
Right.
one. But that's not even true. I can only
Okay.
send a total of $100 through the weakest link before they have to rebalance their stuff or someone has to send money back through the other way. And so it could just be I send like a small bit, then boop, no, I can't route anymore because the one path that I had to this place, they just got like
Has
liquidity
reached
out.
capacity.
And so they have to start sending money through. It doesn't have to be to me, but back
Wow.
through the channel. And then it's, oh, there's enough liquidity again. I can push it back through. Or they have to do like an on chain transaction to rebalance the channel where they're
Well,
like,
if
I got
that's
to
not
put
a way
more
to
in.
limit velocity on a network of money, I don't know what is.
Yeah. It's so like, I don't want to talk too much yet because it's an interesting solution. I think it's cool that people are working on stuff like this. And at some point, it's going to be more usable. But at this, like, it seems like the absolute worst way of doing things. Like, it seems like just the worst, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like creating a chat messaging system where messages randomly drop off. I mean, that doesn't feel very safe, right?
Yeah. And you always have to be on the line with the person, or if
Right.
not, you could lose all your
Yeah.
conversation.
If you close your tab, you might lose everything you've ever said before.
Yeah,
Could you
and
go
they might
back?
take all, and if you do it like abruptly enough, they might just take all your money. It's like,
Right?
what? Right? It's just like, it's a little like walking on eggshell thing. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine, like, yeah, I don't want to make it a little too, you know, imagine it's like a really toxic relationship
Hmm.
where you're just like sitting on eggshells. It's just like, hey, can I go out with my friends tonight? It's like, well, I don't know, can you? Like, and then have you done enough things for me this week? Because if not, then no, you can't. And then you gotta like be talking to me at the same time, and you
Right.
can't just send a message. It's like you gotta be face to face. And if you like drop off the line, then you can lose all privileges for a while. Just like what is walking on eggshells, toxic relationship. That's what it's like running a lightning node.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear it's going well for you
Yeah, I mean,
after 3 months of effort. I mean, she's hot though, right? She's hot.
yeah, I mean, small town hot. What are you gonna say? So, all right. So, before we go into these news stories and stuff, um, I'll let you know again that I have once again taken executive privilege and paywalled Chuck. You want to talk to Chuck? It's going to cost you. You can do it through Odysee Hyperchats or
I got time to go along today if you want. I don't know.
cointier.ee/the desert links through CoinTree, and then this thing will pop out at the bottom. So, first order of business is, I don't know if you saw this one, that the U.S. SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, they want to work with Congress to regulate crypto exchanges, basically to make crypto exchanges like other asset exchanges um, in the kind of name of, what do they call it, like consumer protection.
Oh, it's always about safety. Government can't do anything without justifying it with safety.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm getting a little bit of an echo on your end.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Let me see if I can manage that a little bit.
Yeah, all the cool kids do the AirPods these days, but I don't. I have the big old clunkers. And you just want to be naked and afraid there.
Is that better?
I think so. I can still hear you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
So, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know, hopefully that echo isn't too bad. I do see it, kind of jumping on your... Is it really bad? Do I need to reconnect? I've seen Jitsi do this.
So, do you have headphones?
I do. Let me see if I can.
That would probably be the best. So I'll just let you chat while you're getting those on or whatever. Man, it's funny. All the audio-only podcast listeners who's not listening to this live are going to hear something really weird going on. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I understand the value of having quality audio. So give me a second.
There we go. I can't hear. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect.
Well,
perfect. We're there. Yeah.
Is that better? Is that actually better?
Yes. I cannot hear any echoey stuff.
All right. 1 second here.
Yeah, someone was commenting about
Yeah, so I did have a couple comments on this one. First off, government doesn't really do anything. They instruct or try to instruct parentheses mind-controlled open close parentheses people to do things, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to end up on a dwindling, hyperinflating budget, by the way, are going to have to financially or outsource this to existing people who are already in the market, because they're not crypto experts. And they're certainly not financial experts, though they might claim to be, even though they have the right to create money depending on which game they play. But so they're going to outsource it, right? And they'll probably go through exchanges or banks and bank connections, or through reporting agencies. Like I could see Experian and those guys getting involved into this and reporting on holdings and crap like that, or all of the above. And this is the same old playbook. They're just going to make some kind of edicts and create fences and walls for a herded population of legitimately farmed taxpayers. And I can certainly see that happening, but maybe we need a new taxation system that doesn't have to go through all these hoops. Like, this is just more and more bureaucratic digital tape. But my take on that, we need a new digital tax system that's like 100% voluntary, 100% public, and 100% incentivized by virtues, because people want a virtue signal. I mean, what if you woke up one day and because of a donation you made, the president was on TV saying, "Yeah, we'd like to thank Chuck Williams for his donation for the XYZ project. We really appreciate that." And that was it. That would be huge for millions of people, I think, across the United States. Especially if it was 100% public and 100% incentivized by that virtue signal, just a thought. But, and then they finally, and you can see where this is going. Cause I mean, gosh, I got to tell you, Joel, all of these links you sent me seem to be heavily laced with propaganda, right? Because the first people that they go to, as they list in the last paragraph of that first article, is they go to the Federal Reserve and the FDIC. They talk to them first about this as consultants. Really? You're going to go to them about setting up crypto management? I mean, this is not about safety. This is about money. That's it, and control of it.
Yes, and it's funny though. I have a not at all pessimistic view on this whole thing because I just have a very realistic view that this was always going to be on its way. People are always going to try that. But here's the thing. I mean, do you remember Game Stonks? That seems like so long ago by now, but it was not
Yeah,
very long
I
ago.
know.
People did the
No,
people were getting screwed by the financial system for so long that some people said, you know what, let's just band together with this wonderful tool called the internet and just
hmm,
pump and dump something like the billionaires always do, as it were.
right.
And so, but
Yeah.
it's going to be like for the people. It's a P&D for the people. And so they
Hmm.
did the people's pump and dump, which you know that should be a good like prefix to like a nation, like the people's pump and
That
dump of
story's going
Korea.
to be told for generations, I think.
Yeah. So like the people's pump and dump in America happened, and then
Yeah.
it's pretty soon everything just got shut down. Everyone stops trading this, everyone stops that. People have their positions auto liquidated or whatever. There's a whole bunch of funny business. And people get a what I think is a glorious, expensive yet glorious crash course in how the financial system is rigged. So that
Oh
happens
yeah.
there. And then they turn their sights, what's the next meme thing we can pump? And then they go to Dogecoin. And then they
Right.
start doing that stuff. And then they're seeing, of course, now everyone wants to crack down on the crypto exchanges and say, no, no, we can't do that, consumer protection and stuff. But right around this time is the rise of decentralized exchanges. And so it's like the perfect storm of catalysts of, oh, everyone learns that the financial system is screwed. Oh, everyone gets into crypto now, and then everyone learns to get their keys off their coins off exchanges and trade. It's just this perfect layup setup, just like right there, just
Right.
like red carpet
Yeah.
right there.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. I think that's there's going to be a certain percentage that don't make it out of the corral before they close the gates, though, right? And at some point, in order to withdraw, you're going to have to jump through some levels of hoops. I think more than we already do if you're not already KYC'd on whatever exchange that you use. You should have just assumed if you've been KYC'd that you're being monitored. You
Yeah, of
know,
course.
and that data is being collected, and you're probably being associated with all of your shopping habits and your Facebook, uh, you know, uh, scores of various natures. you know,
Yeah, I wonder what they think about you, Chuck, with all those trees in the background. I wonder what they're like. Oh, we can sell this guy all kinds of plant-based supplements. I don't
right?
know,
Right? Yeah.
whatever they see. But the thing is, like, who is going to use these nonsense like heavily regulated exchanges with all this kind of stuff? Uh, if you can do something like that on a decentralized exchange that's user friendly, if
Mhm.
those conditions are met, it just who's going to be like, oh well, because it always hits you. The worst part about all this like regulation stuff, it isn't. It's in the user experience, and that's the thing. Is like obviously, I think there's a bigger issues at play here. There's financial freedom. There's all that kind of stuff. There's all these kinds of high-minded principles, but it always boils down to bad UX, right? Everything boils down to bad UX. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to wait 7 days before I can do the trail. I do this. Oh, they tell me I can't anymore because they just closed Doge for the day, or the Doge trading for that. I can't do that anymore. And I gotta like dig through my thing and get my little ID and do this for this. I just did that. Like, why do I have to justify it? It's just the pain in the ass of doing it. And so some people would
Mhm.
just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna like, once I get my Doge off this thing, I'm just gonna throw it on Thorchain, get some of this back, get some Dash back over here. Gonna swap that for some Bitcoin, maybe some Monero over here, and then just like I just free. I just get to click, 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 boom. There we go. Trade done. And like,
Right.
who's gonna be like, yeah, but I'd rather go for the regulated exchanges. Like, no, it's gonna be the death of those dinosaur exchanges. I think not
Well,
right away.
I'd like to. They're just the laggards. The
Mm-hmm.
shall we say, I don't know, political, socioeconomic laggards of
Mm-hmm.
our time. Who are that X percent that's going to wait until the government basically acquiesces to the rest of society, and they then will say, okay, well, I guess the legitimacy doesn't come from the government anymore because they're not in the money game anymore. Like but it'll just take 10, 20 years for them to get there.
Yeah, and people don't always think about legitimacy when they're just trying to be a user. Like sometimes they do, but usually they're just like, does it work? Can I do it? Like I want
Mm-hmm.
to trade Doge for this. How are they going to
Mm-hmm.
trade Doge? Like this thing works to trade Doge. Like as long as they're not scared about losing money, as long as they're not legitimately scared, then the way you decide that isn't like, well, like no one sees about FDIC insurance, and no one looks at that shit. But what people do is
Right.
they
Yeah.
ask each other, like, "Hey, did anyone lose money on this?" No, all right, I'm going to do it. That's like
Now
that's
that's
it.
that's a generational thing. There are still those that are, elder generations that will ask. They will say, "I want a custodian. I want FDIC insurance. They want these things."
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, in my experience, these have been like boomers and beyond,
Mm-hmm.
who see they still believe that government has moral high ground and that the government make things legitimate. Like that's their perspective. It is the government that makes things legitimate. It's not legitimate unless it came through the government or the government gave it the stamp of approval. And it's a
Yeah.
certain mindset, and it's a certain percentage of people, and they're going to be out there for some period of time.
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, how many of those people are trying to buy crypto because crypto's not government approved.
They're trying to buy it for other reasons. They're interested in it. They're allowing the institutions to break the waters for them, and
Mm-hmm.
then they'll follow in with the institutions.
Yeah. Well, I feel like anyone who has the technical knowledge or just familiarity, it's not even knowledge at this point, it's like familiarity, the technical
Mm-hmm.
familiarity to send or receive a crypto transaction themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all like Dex right away. Because it's like it's not just like the insurance, it's just people that don't know how to do it and they don't know how to if they accidentally send it into the river instead of where it's going and it's gone. Like the people are
It's so
scared of
easy to
that,
make
you know.
mistakes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But all that Doge talk reminds me of like the next one, of course, which is
yeah.
Elon. Now, there's not like a lot of substance to this point. It's just Elon is back on the crypto bandwagon. This is not like a one thing that happened. Just follow him on Twitter. I mean, it's a great source of entertainment or misery depending
Right.
on who you are.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Eat popcorn. That's popcorn eating
yeah, and like
thread.
I prefer to just like digest it like third party, like just have someone allude. Hey, did you see what he said there? Like, what did he say? Oh, okay. Like rather than go
Yeah.
straight to the source, cause it's just too much. But he's like, so he goes, oh, Bitcoin sucks. We're gonna stop using it. Environmental disaster. And then he gets into all this stuff about the scaling doesn't work and a bunch of other shit like that. And then the markets go. And
Right.
then after I was like, yeah, but I think it's still kind of good. And then like I think I don't know. I think he over screwed up his investment, and now he's just like trying to get back in it and trying to like smooth things out. Yeah, man, guys, I'm not like. And then all the Bitcoiners hate him. They're like, we want to burn our Teslas. It's been
Yeah.
hilarious to watch, but yeah.
I mean, my take on it. I mean, when I saw that one tweet about how he was, they're not going to accept Bitcoin anymore because Bitcoin mining is wasteful, and we can do better kind of message. At
Hmm.
that point, I was like, okay, this guy seems to be a part of the elitists' plan, and he's playing along with the financial collapse and the IMF reset plan. Like
Mm.
he's playing into that with the whole global credits thing. Because I'm not really impressed with that. I mean, I thought that he had promise, but and I acknowledge that he's definitely a tech genius, but he has no soul in his work anymore, and he's just kind of riding the waves of social opinion and literally, quite literally, capitalizing on it with his billions and billions of dollars that he's been given by, the system such as it is. And by the way, he holds tons of neutral carbon credits,
Mm.
right? In California, like millions and maybe billions of dollars worth. So if which incentivizes him and his government friends to make sure that the carbon credit system rolls out. And it's very easy to imagine a future world where some government approved, legitimized carbon chain that is, connected with Tesla and the government and the, IMF and the global blah, 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 to issue carbon credits and choose the winners of the carbon neutral lottery, I can definitely see that coming for the future.
Yes, which sort of rolls into this next one. I kind of like to combine them both. With carbon neutral Bitcoin fund gains traction as investors seek greener crypto.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there's like a lot of layers to this, and I think that the actual like this is my I won't say it's like a conspiracy theory because it's not even that outlandish. I think that the entire carbon discussion surrounding crypto has never ever been a legitimate one. It's never been
No.
an honest
Yeah.
one. And it doesn't
Oh, yeah.
mean that I don't think there can be cryptocurrencies or cryptocurrencies can be optimized being less energy intensive than Bitcoin. I do think so, and I think they should be,
Okay. Yeah.
which is
So here.
why Dash exists the way it does with its hybrid model and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing about I believe, and I haven't fact checked any of this stuff, so this is not a fact check show. This is, so don't get your little like Facebook NPC thingies popping up on this stuff.
Yeah. No. We're just two people
Listen at your own risk. This is entertainment. Okay.
talking.
Entertainment purposes only, not investment. All the usual disclaimers that come before making wildly irresponsible claims of prices that are going to ruin your whole audience. Anyway, so sorry, I've been around the block. I've got jaded by now.
Right.
But
Yeah, I get it.
I have heard, Elon Musk's business, his green business, not his like, let's pollute the atmosphere by sending rockets to space one, but like the car business is only profitable because of energy subsidies. And because I believe only a certain amount of his revenue can come from, Tesla is too high comes from non-renewables at that point. Too high the profit comes from non-renewables.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh shit, let's tank the price real quick so we don't have to give up the gravy train. And I mean, it's very, obvious if
Yeah.
if you kind of follow the crumbs.
Money. Yeah.
And
No, it's just the money.
yes,
That's
just
the
follow
old
the money.
story, right?
And the thing is, I believe in like taking people at their like that they're where their face value. I believe Elon's doing two things in life. One is he's doing the things he says he's doing. Like he genuinely wants to send people to Mars and colonize this stuff. And he wants to sell electric cars. He wants to build tunnels. He wants to do all those things, and he probably wants to make a lot of money while doing so. And he's going to be aligned towards those goals, period. It makes sense. And then, of course, the other thing is he likes to poke at things. He likes to joke around and poke at things. And when he pokes at something and has a real-world impact, he's not going to be like, hey, I was just kidding, I'm going to stop. Like, no, he's just going to poke at it more and more and more and just see what happens. And so...
Well, if it's a successful poke, if he doesn't
Yeah.
get burned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
And so he's definitely doing that. But the thing is that the carbon thing is very interesting because of like the geopolitical dance that it plays. Because people have been talking about, oh, let's reduce carbon emissions by this much, blah 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 blah. And of course, who's not playing the game there is China. No one's they're not doing that at all, or at least they weren't in the past, right? And so now, of course, because of all that and because of other stuff, they control an inordinate amount of cryptocurrency hash power, especially Bitcoin. And that makes them a regional player, a power player, right? And then it's just think about the way you attack China, right? The way you trade war with China, whatever the stuff that Trump was saying out loud that everyone else is still trying to do. You can't just do that, or then you're a xenophobe. There's war and stuff like that. Whatever happens. But what you can do is just like clutch your pearls about the climate and just like screw whatever business that they have indirectly. And if you notice, like right after all that stuff, all that climate-based pushback against Bitcoin, China's like, you know what? All our Bitcoin's going to be clean energy now. Get rid of the coal plants and stuff. And big shakeup because they don't want to be like, oh, well, we only do renewable crypto, and then all of a sudden their coin dumps, like the one that they want to still have a seat at the table of the financial system of the future, even though it's not like So that's like all those shuffles happened like in very quick succession, and then there you go. And now all of a sudden, Elon's not under fire for supporting like a China coin necessarily, because it could be diversifying to different countries, but
Yeah,
also
very interesting
yeah,
how they all aligned very quickly, isn't it?
yeah, and it's not like a convoluted conspiracy theory. Everyone's just acting according to their Occam's razor, their simplest possible explanation, best self interest, and that's
Hmm.
why it shakes out. And of course, no one, no one's honest though. No one gets to just say, "I want money. I want to screw China" or whatever. No one can just
But
say
isn't
that.
that the whole point? Like in
Yeah,
Bitcoin, you don't have to be honest, right? Like
yeah.
look how Bitcoin has motivated all these people to do different things selfishly, and yet we have societal changes that are happening
Hmm.
very, very quickly. Perceptions and truths and all kinds of information just coming out. It's really interesting to watch it happen for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny. It reminds me of the what was that? The parable of the scorpion and the frog. I'm sure most people have heard of that one by now. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, yeah, I know that one. I told it not too long ago. The scorpion's like wanting to ride across the river and ask the frog for a ride, and the frog is like, "No, screw
Nice.
you. You're gonna kill me halfway over." And the scorpion's like, "No, I promise I won't. It's cool. No, we're good, right?"
Hmm.
And frog's like, "All right, you convinced me." And then so the scorpion climbs on the frog's back, and they swim. And about halfway through, a scorpion stings him. And as they're going down under, the frog says, "You what, dude? We're both gonna die now. Why did you do this?" And the scorpion's all, "Well, dude, I'm a scorpion. Sorry, I couldn't help it."
Yeah,
Right?
as I just get stingy sometimes. All right, it happens.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
But it's true about like the crypto space. People, I don't know. People try to assume, and this thing that drives me nuts about conspiracy theorists as much as sheeple type people
mm,
it's the same kind of nonsense where they don't want to believe basic human nature of like the sheeple people just want to believe, oh, whatever the official stories told us is true. Just why would they lie? It's just the way it is. Which,
hmm,
come on, like no one has an incentive to lie. And then the other side, they're just like, well, according to this and that, if they do this and the thing and that and the thing, and they had this handshake agreement at this, it's like, does it have to be that complicated? Maybe it's just the obvious thing of they want more power and money and are trying to get away with
yeah,
it. Like,
yeah. Why can't it just be that simple? I mean, most of the universe is just that simple. There's simple
hmm,
motivations and simple transactions that make simple people do simple things, and it's just that simple. you know?
yeah. Which that does remind me of something. Before we talk about the NFT stuff, I do want to go a little off road here. We'll go off road on how that applies to Bitcoin maximalism, because we were mentioning that
Mm,
stuff earlier. And if
hmm.
there's any big Bitcoin people watching, I'm sorry, but whatever. Oh, that guy hyper chat me a library credit. Thank you. And he says Rocket Ship Pants. Thanks, Rocket Ship Pants. Uh, Fun fact that has a little to do with why the podcast started a little late, but we'll save that for another thing.
Right
Um,
on.
but anyway, obviously, let's just talk about the Blockstream conspiracy, right? Which is a huge, like, some people are like, yeah, amen, brother, blah, and other people are like, yeah, you're a stupid. Okay, let's just talk. Let's just be very clear about like Blockstream owns patents, right, in a lot of like Lightning Network implementation things, but they were mostly about their own proprietary product, Liquid, right? They're
Hmm.
clearly invested in scaling solutions to Bitcoin that are,
Right.
and just because Lightning is easy, just because it's open source and everyone can use it and stuff today, doesn't mean that if you have some sort of a patent on certain implementations, which anyone could make their own implementation, I guess, but like, C Lightning, or I don't know if they're in Lightning Labs or whatever, but basically they're invested in trying to make money off of off-chain scaling solutions. And
Right.
if they pay people who develop Bitcoin to a certain way, they're trying like, and a lot of people say they just wanted to ruin Bitcoin or whatever like that. Um, I don't know what to think about that. I'm not. I'm going to leave that one neutral for now. But it makes sense if they have a company invested in these sorts of things and they pay people to develop a coin, and that their priorities would shift towards like their perspectives. It's not like, hey, forget everything you know about how the network works and just lie and say we need to scale off chain. I don't think it's that simple either. It's just they're paying
Mm,
people, they're paying developers, and whoever's paying, like that mindset, people, you don't want to go against the hand that feeds you. So why would you be paid by Blockstream, for example, that's all about this stuff, and then you already have your misgivings about, well, on chain we could scale on chain if there are these challenges, we could do off chain there's these challenges. Like it just naturally nudges people over. Of course, they could have been told directly, but whatever it is, that kind of explains why Bitcoin ended up the way it does today. And then anytime you have a maximalist, they're protecting their hoard. Like it doesn't have to be their technical arguments. So it just, they got all this money, they got all this time invested in learning about Bitcoin, learning about Lightning and other stuff like that. And like why would they be like, yeah, but Ethereum looks cool? Like why would they just defend their stash, Anyway, quick
Yeah,
little rant
yeah.
rundown thing there.
Yeah, well, if I may comment on that, I mean,
Absolutely.
when it comes to Blockstream as an organization, I mean, wasn't that one of Roger Vere's complaints? Is that like they're a corporation who's incentivized, and that's why Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin, right? Right, from his perspective, because it's been corrupted by this corporate monster who basically had enough money to sway the developmental direction, right? I think that's kind of my take on Roger Vere's perspective, but
Yeah.
from my perspective as a software developer, I look at it. I mean, there could be some less insidious, very simple explanations as to why it kind of manifested that way. And one of the first principles that I've come to understand in the software industry is that technologists are going to technologize. And oftentimes when you get groups of technology folks together, without any clear vision of what success looks like, you end up with these like little factions of technologists who have their little favorite technology in their little favorite technology stacks
Yes.
that end up fractalizing into just these weird ass directions that nobody really can corral or gather or organize, because the developers are in control, and at the same time they're in control in two different
The
ways,
sausage
both in
makers
terms of
get in love with the sausage a little too much in weird ways.
yeah,
And again,
exactly. And
very Occam's razor thing, and I absolutely buy that. Like the thing I don't buy about the Blockstream conspiracy, as it were, is that just all the people that support that either got bought off, like are in on it, or they just got mind controlled. Like that is ridiculous to me. Like it just
right.
it's not like that. It's like clearly a lot of the arguments made sense along at some kind of a way, and then they just decided to go that way. And clearly
Yeah.
there were already people thinking this before there was this like push, and that group started to win out. And I think it's
Yeah.
funny because like I'm thinking about Lightning, right? And of course, like the limitations of Lightning, like I was explaining about having to push the money across the one channel here, you have to rebalance the thing, the weakest link, all that kind of stuff. What if, like, wouldn't it be great if like Lightning was just a purely decentralized side chain that you, like literally you just had Lightning, like
Well,
literally it
that's
was,
how Paul Poye was thinking about it. I remember reading Paul Poye of Edge, CEO
yeah,
of Edge. Like he was arguing for like, hey, any Lightning token is essentially a new token. It's not the same as Bitcoin, and that was his whole argument.
and
And
people
he
don't like
pissed off a
that.
lot of people. Yeah, he didn't, but he was just like looking at it objectively and matter of factly. Like it's a different thing. It behaves different. It doesn't have the same incentive structures. It's a whole different thing. Yeah, you got to jump through hoops and you got to go through this Bitcoin path to get there. But once you're there, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So what I would recommend, what like I if only Lightning could be made that way, where it's just like you move money into the off chain, and then now it's like on chain Bitcoin, but it's on the off chain, and it's a faster, pruned, maybe proof of stake kind of like network or whatever. But whatever it is, it's just way higher throughput because you don't care about all the sound money, decentralization, proof of work stuff that's on the main chain that might hold it back. You don't care about that stuff. It just, that would be pretty cool, to be honest. Like I would rather just do all on chain to begin with, but that would be simple. I could get on Lightning and just send you any amount I want, and whoop, there you go. But it's like, well, based on technical limitations, I'm sure that couldn't be done. And because literally what Lightning Network is just a two-way payment channel in a basic multi-sig kind of a thing. And then you just
Yeah,
sort of
well,
link them together a little bit. It's a very hodgepodgey because,
that's the thing. I was gonna say, yeah,
yeah.
it's hodgepodgey because it was kind of built that way. It was built as a hodgepodge, a bunch of different developers with a bunch of different little ideas that connected little bits and pieces and said, hey, we can do it like this, or we can do it like this, we can do it like this, and they're all just kind of experimenting it together, and they just
Hmm.
landed on a collection of defaults that I think, I mean, they made different value trade-offs, right? And this is where I was going to go earlier, is the problem. This is a problem that's pervasive across the whole crypto industry, not just Bitcoin itself, and not with the Blockstream issue. This happens everywhere across the whole crypto industry, which is you get a bunch of developers together who don't understand value. They don't know what is valuable to other people. So they just inject their own values. And so with their own values being injected, that's how the code gets written, because that's what they're valuing. And in a lot of cases with these guys, they're valuing, some kind of technological bigotry thing, whatever favorite technology they just want to use because it's fun, and or security. A lot of these guys are just super hyper security. Like, I gotta lock it down, I gotta make it strict, I gotta make it the rules, and and whether it's a legalistic mindset or some kind of hierarchical mindset or some kind of like just simple like architectural or engineering focused mindset, or even just a basic logical mindset. If you are in all of those, embedded in those 100% of your day, and you don't ever step back and say intuitively, accessing the right brain, accessing the emotions, accessing the heart of people, what's really going to come out of this that's valuable, then you're going to go down this technology path, and you're never going to be guided correctly. You may get lucky and hit the mark every now and again, but you're not going to hit the mark of humans in their heart, where they can say, oh yeah, this is useful, I can use this is great, thank you developer, I will pay you.
Yeah, let me. So Lightning, obviously, it came from a series of restrictions, and we already. I mean, I'm not going to rope you into this nonsense, but I already used the toxic relationship kind of metaphor for that. Let me use like a dating app metaphor for it now. That it's like, if you put all these filter settings of like who you want to be matched up with. You just say, well, I'm a male, I want to be matched up with a female. Okay. She has to be at most 24 years old. She has to be within this many, within 5 miles. She's got to be like right around the corner, basically. She got this. The more filters you apply, the system that comes back to you, what your results are going to be more and more constrained, and you might not get anything good at all. You might just get the one option who's like works at the 7-Eleven around the corner, and that's it, because you place so many filters that's literally all you can do. And I kind of feel like Lightning is the same way, right? First off, you can't increase the block size. You cannot hard fork Bitcoin. That's the big thing. You cannot hard fork Bitcoin. You cannot do a bunch of. It's got to be all these constraints, and so then that makes it so you have to build this like rickety structure on top of, and then you just
yeah. This is actually a thing in the software world. We call it design by constraints.
Yes.
Where and it happens a lot, actually. You come into a job, and the first thing you get is usually you get the constraints first. As a matter of fact, it's actually hard. So there's the constraint. These are the main drivers of any project. You have constraints, and you have the vision or the goals or the outcomes or the results that you want, right? And those two are in tension with each other. And it's the resolution of those tensions that ultimately gives you whatever product you're trying to produce. But when you're a software developer and you're a client, and you go into a client office, a lot of times the only thing that they know is the constraints. They might have one thing that they're trying to do. Well, we want to do this, but we can't do this, and 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 we have to do it this way, and we have to use this, and we have to talk to that department, and we have to jump through those hoops. But they never tell you all that up front. Half of the project is figuring out all those constraints while you're working with the client. And then the other half of the project is figuring out, okay, what do you really want to do here? What are the real goals that you're trying to figure out? What do you want to accomplish? And you're getting down into finer and finer details. Oh, okay, we can do it like this, or we can do it like this. We can do it this way or that way. And you can, and those are the things where this is how I juxtapose it. You have two options in any scenario. You can design by what you want to avoid, those constraints, or you can design by what you want to approach, those goals. And you can do it exclusively one way or the other also, depending on where you are. And it's just a matter of productivity versus safety. It's just a seesaw between the two.
Yeah, and you can use both as well. You can have a series of constraints, but just few, and then that leaves a whole bunch of possibility out there.
Right.
And then you start applying what you want to select for, what you want to maximize, and somewhere around you get the kind of thing figure out. I would love to go into this as far as applies to Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin as VNex. But real quick, we
Yeah.
did get one time says, "Hey Joel and Chuck, in general, how do you think crypto will change society in the next decade? How will governments fight it, and how/when will they acquiesce, assuming that they do?" Thank you one time. Very generous of you and very nice of you to ask such a such a layup of a question for us that there's so many
Yeah.
ways. I'll let you go first because I like to talk too much and you're the guest.
Right on. So yeah, read it to me again. How will it change society? How are
Okay,
governments going to fight it? And
let me expand it back out again. And how/when will they acquiesce? Well, is it
acquiesce.
just like give up, I guess, and accept
It's
that this is the way
funny.
it's going?
Okay, okay. So this is really cool. I've been giving this a lot of thought, interestingly, because it's the title of my talk at Shitcoin is why mass adoption needs social shitcoins, right? So I've had to think about this, and I recently finished a book and re-listened to it because I'm on Audible for the third time in a row. I'm on it now.
Nice.
This is it's called The Fourth Turning, and I forget the author's name, but definitely
Mm,
check out this book, The Fourth Turning. It was written in 1997, and it has kind of accurately predicted what has unfolded since 2000 and here into 2021. And
nice.
because of that, those levels of accuracy and predictability, I am now a firm believer that between now and 2030, mental shift somehow, some way. In addition to what we experienced with COVID, because that was one of the things that was predicted in this book, this whole COVID kind of epidemic kind of thing. But by the way, also again written in 1997, it kind of predicted 9/11 a little bit
Mm,
in a, but it was a little early on that, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole you can go down. They tried to invoke it, maybe they knew it was coming, so they tried to make it happen early. Blah 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 blah. Right. So, but in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see what is known in the fourth turning as the crisis that our generation, our time has to overcome. And in this book, they kind of break down these four sections of the saculum, and each of these four sections has a generation that is born in it. My generation is known as the nomad generation. And, speaking from a very kind of my own I'm re-listening to it because I want to understand my role in it, and then I want to
hmm
try and build on it and understand what's happening from a wider perspective. So I'm speaking from my personal perspective and experience of the fourth turning and how I see all of this fitting in over the next 10 years, and I'm using this for in a lot of different ways. Before I go too deep, it's like
Yeah.
I'm using it in my financial management. I'm using it in my life planning with my wife. I'm using it in where I want to live and how I want to live. And, I'm kind of using it to shape a lot of different things in my future planning, which I think about a lot.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and so as a nomad 13er, our charge during the high, which follows the crisis, okay, the crisis years before 2030, according to the book.
Mm,
And so we're in the latter half of that predictive period, of the crisis. And the crisis is a generational thing that affects us for the whole entire next saculum. And the crisis is followed by the high. The last crisis was World War II, followed by a very expansive period in American history. The most
yeah,
highest
and let's be honest.
income growth, all that kind of
Anywhere
stuff.
outside of communist countries, it was kind of that way too. I mean,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
obviously, this is like super neglecting so many geopolitical details of so many different
right,
countries' histories, but the world as
right.
a whole started to like do a lot better after that.
And I'll note that this book is very America centric and
Yeah.
says that each country kind of has its own saculum, its own period of time and its own cycle that it's going through, and it may or may not align with what's happening in America. But I think at this time, this crisis is global in nature. I
hmm
think, and they propose that it may be so if a lot of other countries are aligning. And I think it's probably going to be that way because the wheels of our global societies have, as with the dollar reserve being the reserve currency for so long, the crisis period it's almost obvious to me that the dollar empire is failing. Like how many
hmm
hundred has to? It can't. I mean, something fundamentally has to change. And so how will crypto affect society? That's I think it's going to be our exit strategy from the financial control that central banks and governments have over money. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to reduce their grip, not because they're giving it up, not because they're changing the system, not because they're modifying it in any way to serve society, but because they've been forced by society, because we have wrested away from them value. And we will create our own communities of exchange on top of these value exchange systems without government approval. That's just how you can't stop a Bitcoin transaction with any government edict,
Yeah.
right? You can't stop that transaction from happening. And that's just going to unfold, fractalize across our societies. So that's how I think it's going to change society. It's going to make transactions of value from peer to peer more and more liquid, more and more free, more and more opt in only, not mandated. You won't have
Mm-hmm.
your tax. I mean, the taxes are changing, and this is this. I actually just started thinking about this today. Taxes are changing. There have been societies where taxation was not based on your labor. You're like in America, I think you as a laborer, you receive about 40 to 45% of what you work for overall. And that's
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's including sales tax, but and oftentimes if you're a laborer, if you're an employee, you don't even get to see that money before it's taken out of your paycheck,
Of
and you just think
course.
that's it. You just got to, and then they do whatever they do with it, and you might get a refund at the end of the year if you're lucky. You can ask and go groveling back to them and say, hey, can I have my money back, please? That you used for whatever the fuck to kill people with. Sorry, that particular piece of it is frustrating for me. So
Yes.
I think that's going to reduce because they won't be able to extract value anymore automatically, right? And the government will fight this. Getting into the next piece of it, how will governments fight this? They may try to make other things illegal, but I think they're already behind the eight ball on it. They've already lost the population's trust politically and financially, and so the solution cannot come from them. They cannot. It never does, and so there will be some alternate solution that essentially wrests control of issuance and value away from them. And essentially the only way that government can fight it is with people, and the people are the ones who have the agency to do things as agents of the government, and they must fight on behalf of the government against everything that society is doing, every
Mm-hmm.
social token, every Bitcoin thing. They have to tell all their smartest friends that, hey, you need to pay your taxes, and fight on behalf of the government against all the smartest people in the world who are Ethereum developers, Bitcoin developers, who are attracting the young-minded millennials of our world, who intend to change the world, who intend and tell them, no, you have to pay your taxes. No, it's going to change. They can't fight it. They will try. That's how they're going to fight it, though. But because that battlefield happens in the mind, and so that's where the battle is ultimately going to be, is in that minority, the growing or shrinking minority of people who are essentially statists, who believe
Yes.
that they are statists, and the government is going to fight it by basically pumping more and more money and power as much as they can for as long as they can into nothing, or a crack up boom, or some kind of deflationary event or something like that. And it's going to happen before 2030. And the fight will be over. The fight will be won by the people. And then we will go, and this is where the fourth turning is, you go into the high. And how will they acquiesce? They will essentially have no choice. They will basically give up, because society itself has said, you know what, government, we're done with you running our money, and we're done with you making our daily life decisions. We're tired of you injecting things into our body and telling us what we can and can't do with our bodies. And I think we can spend our money more effectively, and we can have voluntary taxation systems, and we can do better.
Yeah.
That's
So
when they'll acquiesce.
I agree with, I mean, having not read the book and not like the specific kind of prophecy bits, I can't comment on. The rest I would basically 100% agree with. And I do kind of see the same thing. Society goes in cycles. And one thing I've known over,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
just changes having so fast. But let me just add some details as far as on that prediction. Again, I agree with all that. I'm just gonna add some details as to how I think things will shake out. I agree with all that. However, attention with this long view, a lot of us will miss that this is happening.
Hmm.
Like, even though this is like the hugest thing to happen in like millennia almost, if you're not paying attention, you're gonna miss that it even happened. Life will keep going, right? And it's not like, oh, like for example, no one missed that World War II happened. right? Well,
Yeah.
maybe some people, but they must have been smoking a lot of weed to just lose that half decade there or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
They
But
were on an island somewhere, disconnected.
yeah, but I think so. First off, I think that this won't look like what we think it'll look like. This transition to a new and better age won't look the same necessarily. The other thing is, like the concept of yin and yang, how one thing I think is always,
Mm-hmm.
and what we see with, like, for example, I don't think that the government systems will just collapse and they'll just be sitting on their collapsing lifeboats and just like die. Like, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think that, for example, let's just say almost all exchanging in the future happens on via the Thorchain protocol. Let's just make an assumption there, right? Which it might be a little optimistic, or a little like specific considering how many other things can be developed. Let's just say it's all on Thorchain or whatever, and anyone can
Sure.
run a Thorchain node. I think the Federal Reserve is going to be running a Thorchain node.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, if
not
they're still
not the Fed
functional.
maybe, but the people behind the Fed will be running a Thorchain node. Like every time
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I think that depends on how it manifests. Like, I wonder if the Fed will be disbanded at some point, um, and maybe superseded or subsumed by some kind of global something or other that tries to be an international monetary standard of some kind.
yeah. So when there's these turnover things happen, I like here's the thing. I'm very positive in my mindset. Like I'm very optimistic about the future. I'm really excited. I'm glad I didn't pick right now to be alive, but I'm glad that my parents picked right now to make me be alive because it's cool. It's awesome
Debatable.
times. Yeah. Well, well. Anyway, but I don't think that the glorious financial system of the future is going to be free of the power players of today. I think a lot of the people are going to be a lot of Bitcoin is going to be held by former banksters. A lot of the infrastructure is going to be run by former banksters. A lot of everything is they're still going to be there. They're going to be just smaller. First off, the system is going to give them less control. And I think that they will be a smaller part of the system. There'll be a bunch of new people involved, but they'll still be there. And so, like, the people that are like, I'm not utopian in the way I think that, like, all the powerful people are just going to go away. All the assholes. Like, no, they're still going to be around. They're just going to have less power.
Yeah.
Same thing with taxation, right? I don't
Right.
think taxation is going away in my lifetime. I do
Right.
think it will get reformed in certain ways, and I think that the people collecting it will acquiesce to having a smaller percentage of people's wealth than they might have today, but they're still going to find their way to getting it, of getting theirs, whatever they think it is. I think the
Yeah.
world will be much better. They're always going to be there. So before,
Well, I think that's
yeah,
obvious because they're already in possession of a big portion of society's value, right?
yeah,
Society's capital investments are in the hands legally of a small group of people,
yeah,
uh, and that I think the fundamental shift. Okay, so here's the change:
hmm,
networks, not hierarchies. It's that
yes,
simple. We are converting from a system, a collection of systems that are hierarchically controlled
hmm,
into a collection of systems that are network controlled. And that's going to distribute wealth and power.
yeah, makes sense to me. Uh, this is like a 5 hour long conversation's worth of a
Yeah.
subject. But let me answer. I did have a hyper chat on the whole Bitcoin thing, which I did want to touch on that and then hit on the other Bitcoins and how they similarly have different, like, their own constraints. But
Mm.
Bitcoin needs to be the most decentralized. This is that guy says. Thank you. That guy says Bitcoin needs to be the most decentralized whilst retaining users' ability to validate transactions themselves by running a full node. This is why small blocks are important and why most people can't run an Ethereum node even in the more developed countries. Now, that is a fantastic setup for, first off, all those design considerations are exactly why Bitcoin turned out the way it is today on its very specific thing. However, I'd like to point a few things out on this thing. So Bitcoin needs to be the most decentralized. Now, is it the most decentralized? Is the supply the most decentralized? more than a lot of projects, maybe. However, because it's a country, China, like
Yeah, I was
75%
going
of
to
it.
say that
And
depends on how you define decentralized.
yes, and so I would take any hybrid model, like let's say a Decred or a Dash or something, any day. Just in principle, of course, you'd have to actually see, but then because you need miners and stakers or miners and master nodes, and the distribution of that might be different from just a couple of giant mining farms there. And so it's like inherently possibly more decentralized. Basically, yeah, I agree that decentralization is fantastic and we should strive for something like that. I don't necessarily agree out of hand that Bitcoin is the most decentralized because of that. Now let's hit the
I
next the
If I
next
may
part.
comment on that, if I
Yes,
may comment on that first
comment.
part, um, I my very simply, I think distributed is greater than or better than decentralized. I've heard a few people talk about this idea, and you know, I was all on the decentralized chain for a long time too. But when you realize the nuance between distribution and decentralization, you can see that distribution is a far greater outcome than decentralization. Because with decentralization, you still have hubs and spokes and areas of control. With distribution, it gets a little bit closer to the transactional levels of control.
So let me hit this next part. While still retaining users' ability to validate transactions themselves by running a full node. That is another thing that I think is like there's a good point to that. However, let me hit the other thing. On my hierarchy of priorities, I would say the ability to make and receive trust minimized transactions is at the bottom of the period. That's the foundation. And the next one would be to run your own node and validate things. Bitcoin has lost the ability to do that, basically. I mean, I did get lucky to be, if full disclosure, I opened up a channel and it cost me 30 cents in an on chain transaction because I paid a very small amount and it took like 8 and 10 hours to confirm. But because I had that longer time preference, it was okay. So I'm not just like, but sometimes Bitcoin costs $10, $20 just to move. And so that's just not for everyone. That's not for almost anyone, in fact. And so that sliver at the bottom of the period has been compromised in favor of the next step up. And as such, when you're saying the ability to validate transactions and running a full node. So running a full Bitcoin node is relatively easy because I've done it. I've done a whole Dash node. I've done a full many kinds of nodes. It's not that hard. It's just a lot of It's just 400 gigabytes. That's all. But which is a lot. But whatever. Now running a Lightning node is a completely different morass. And if that is how you will be transacting, that is the validation level you need. If you care about validating your own transactions, but you're just transacting on Lightning all the time, you need to have a Lightning node and do it yourself. And for a Lightning node, I mean, I had a spare laptop that I could run all the time and stuff. Well, let me just say, realistically, if you want to, like anyone can kind of do it, you probably need about $400 to start. Around 300 for like the Raspberry Pi, the 1 terabyte SSD, the casing, the power cables, Ethernet, whatever else. You kind of need that, and then you need $100 just to open a channel with no one will open a channel if you don't have about $100 pretty much, except for little small fries, and you can't even do that. Just like the barrier to entry is like $400 just to do this on its own. And then there's a bunch of other little annoyances as we already discussed about kind of doing that. So already you have to have technical expertise. I mean, it's much more difficult unless you're using a bunch of pre-built kind of solutions like I do, of course. And it's basically the barrier. It's like not, oh, can you run a Bitcoin node? No, you need to run a Bitcoin node and a Lightning node and have some specialized hardware in addition to that realistically, right? You don't need, but you realistically just to be able to validate your transactions. So already the realistic goalpost, I would say, should be moved to how easy is it for someone to run and use a Lightning node as opposed to like that is Bitcoin now, right? It's not, well, the Bitcoin on-chain node because that doesn't work anymore. We have to move those things up to there. And it's like, that's why we get to, small blocks are important and stuff like that. You can't run an ETH node even in developed countries. Yeah, I mean, the thing is also the importance of running your own node on an on-chain, and this is Chuck knows way, the much more technical person, right? Knows way more about this than I do. But if you have like a light wallet, like a mobile wallet for on-chain stuff, like you're just connecting to a whole bunch of nodes anyway, right? And if they decide to go malicious or whatever, like it's so easy, it's child's play to just switch. I'll connect to this one. I'll connect to this one. And at the very like bottom of the thing, I'll run my own node. It's that kind of a consideration. Now, if I have my mobile Lightning wallet, depending on the one, I have to heavily trust a node, not just I connect to them, but they have to provide liquidity for me, which is an extra cost. I have to route through them. I have to do a bunch of stuff like that. And if I decide to switch nodes that I connect to, I would have to, close a whole bunch of channels and stuff and incur the on-chain fees and all that. It's just a huge mess compared to just pointing your on-chain mobile wallet, like say a Dash wallet, to something else. It just, the technical hurdles are so much bigger. The necessity of running your own node on Bitcoin today to make reasonably small transactions is much, much higher than for any on-chain based coin. So that's just kind of where I see that. If you want to add something real quick, you may.
Yeah. I mean, real quick, this is where I get into the goals of things, as an empathic developer, right? And you might ask the question of how easy is it to run a Lightning node, but I'm going to ask, well, why the hell are you running a Lightning node? Is it to validate transactions? What's the value in it for you? And ultimately, you keep asking why, all the way back to the beginning of what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What is your goal? What is your end game here? And many times the answer to that question has nothing to do with anything technological.
Yeah.
And that's where you're trying to find. This is where technologists get lost because they feel useless at that point. Well, I don't know why. I don't know why. Well, fucking have a why. Get in there, understand it, and then you're going to make better decisions.
Yeah. Now we hit to the other Bitcoins. So Bitcoin Cash is my favorite of the Bitcoins. It doesn't mean that's my favorite coin at all, but it is. But still, the design considerations are mentioned about Roger Ver and stuff, pointing out about Blockstream stuff. Roger Ver does have his own, I would say bias is maybe not the best term, but he has his own proclivities towards maintaining a Bitcoin branded project because he is involved in a lot of different coins, and however, Bitcoin.com Bitcoin.com wallet, I believe, just started supporting Ethereum, which is slightly off brand, but whatever. They're all about Bitcoin. It has to be Bitcoin. And so therefore, Bitcoin Cash, as the Bitcoin guy with the Bitcoin.com and all that stuff, he can't just be like, Dash is the best digital cash in the world. Fees are very low and transactions confirmed in a matter of seconds. It's like, no, he's not going to be saying any of that stuff anytime soon, even though he probably believes it, and he does have Dash masternodes because of that. And then we go to the rest of the Bitcoin Cash community. First off, it's a stupid name. I don't care. It's a little bit of a stupid name. Call it something.
You don't like Bitcoin Cash?
No, just call it like eCash or DigiCash but like just call it Bitcoin, which is what they tried, but it didn't work. But it's a little bit of a dumb name. I'm sorry, but whatever. And it's confusing. But because we need it to be Bitcoin, but it works. Okay. And then it's like, all right, well, how do we figure out how do we make zero conf secure? Part of it is by lying about it. I wouldn't say lying about it, but misrepresenting the security of a unconfirmed transaction on the Bitcoin Cash chain. And then part of it is how do we figure out, do an Avalanche pre-consensus type thing? Let's explore that. Let's explore doing a node configuration thing. How about merchant software that alerts you if there's a double they're trying to do all this stuff that if they just decided to go with masternodes, for example, and an instant send lock, they wouldn't have to deal with. But those are outside of their design considerations.
See, that's my point. We're coming back to my point. Yeah, you're right. Because it comes back to why. Why are you going down all these paths when, you have to know where the end begin. This is one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, right? Begin with the end in mind. And you really have to think that through. What does the end look like? You have to ask yourself, what does success look like? And, the masternode path got the Dash community to the success of simple, fast transactions very quickly, right?
And so let me just interject.
Technologists didn't like that.
Interject on the Bitcoin Cash thing. That's probably the reason that I think that Bitcoin Cash is the one I like the most out of the Bitcoins, is because it is the most practically centered around creating making trust minimized transactions for sound money,
Hmm.
which is kind of
Yeah,
why
that
I'm in
that
the game.
bottom thin layer that you were
And
talking about.
so like there's and so at least it's like, well, let's modify the protocol in ways that make it more efficient. Let's do this, that. Let's
Hmm.
do the extra opcode stuff and limits, and then we can do tokens on there, and we can do a bunch of other stuff. And like they're trying to evolve and stuff. Of course, I don't like the limitations, the artificial limitations of it has to resemble the old. It's like hipster Bitcoin. We have to like resemble the old school thing as much as possible while still trying to evolve. There's an inherent tension between those two things, but at least they're going for it. On the other hand, then we hit into Bitcoin SV, which is the ultimate hipster Bitcoin. Just like way back in the day, we didn't have power steering, and pop the clutch all the time. You had to roll down the window like this, and like it's just the old school, but then leaning into it. And because of those design considerations, there's just a lot that cannot be done. However, then there's the whole let's put movies on the blockchain and stuff. And it's like, I don't think that that's ever going to be efficient. However, those are the considerations because you can't have a decentralized, like an IPFS based storage type deal associated with that and just hash the files on the blockchain. You can't do that. It's got to be all on chain. And so because of this stuff, you have this like these weird hodgepodges of things that just don't really make sense if you ask me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and again, technologists kind of technologize. Like, you use storage mechanisms to store stuff. You don't use blockchain mechanisms to store stuff. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
it's to me that's like one of those things that has to be kind of discovered through the evolution of the industry. There's there when any new discovery or science comes out, it takes about 15 minutes or 15 years to get out into the society at large, depending on its level of suppression and communication and education and support and belief and all that kind of stuff, right? That can be greatly accelerated or
Mm-hmm.
greatly slowed down depending on the community and the information itself. But in crypto, there's going to be people, again, this is a developer problem. They get myopic and they get heads down and they get too focused and they don't care about other stuff because they think they've got the direction and they're just going that direction because they oftentimes don't know why. It's just like, this is this is the direction, this is the design, this is where we're going, and the end, that looks like this, but that
Mm-hmm.
end hasn't entirely been thought through, and they just say, well, nobody knows. They just throw their hands up and say, well, nobody knows. We don't know what the future is, and that's fine too. But at least acknowledge that, like, don't claim to know that this is how it's supposed to be, because nobody knows how it's supposed to be. We're all figuring this out.
Yeah, and it's that kind of reminds me also of the design considerations and things involving Nano and IOTA, which I especially like the Nano use case because I'm more familiar with it, but also because it's a little bit easier to identify the constants that they've placed in their kind of development environment, which is we want to do a DAG, right? And instead of a blockchain. Okay.
Hmm.
Then we want
A
to do
DAC, DAC,
yes, a
Decentralized
DAG.
Autonomous Corporation. Oh,
No.
G.
Yeah.
What's the
Directed
G?
acyclic graph, right?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
As opposed to the blockchain. They want to do it
Okay.
that
Yeah.
way. They want to have instant transactions. They want to have infinite scaling, basically, or like high scalability or whatever, high throughput. And they want to have the biggest thing is no fees. And that's the almost like the largest design consideration that is, design constraint. And everything, and especially that one, because everything costs money. And so because of that, you end up in this interesting situation where they're like, okay, well, how do we provide security for the network? And so they have a system where, everyone has their own little blockchain, whatever, but it has to be, there has to be consensus at the very top layer. And so, of course, they have some sort of collateralized nodes. They're not collateralized nodes. They're just nodes anyone can run. But then people pledge credits behind them. They just say, I'm lending my voting weight behind this thing. And I forget the acronym for the voting system or whatever. But it's basically like delegated proof of stake to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Except
Sounds like that.
because except it's more fluid, and because there's no money, there's no fees. You basically
You
anyone
can
can run a node, and it's not like you have people trying to run nodes because they make money out of it. It's
right,
much more
right,
loose. And then of course, because there's no fees, you can get spammed to death. But
right.
everyone has to do a little bit of proof of work in order to put a transaction through. And so that's the anti proof of work is an anti-spam filter. Instead of actually paying, you do that. And they had a big spam attack problem, which shut down the network despite all this, or basically made a lot of it unusable. I don't know exactly where they are in fixing that, but then again, because these design constraints, you got rid of the basic, economic principles that make things move, and then at some point, I think you're going to run full circle. And of course, IOTA is a very similar structure and all that stuff, just more about Internet of Things and all that. But the same thing where they're like, no blockchain, no masters, everyone just tangles together and stuff. And at some point they figure out, oh, we need a single source of truth. So we're going to do a centralized coordinator node before we figure it out. And then of course that didn't work. And so
Yeah.
now I believe the system they're going to go with, the coordicide as they call it, or that will result in is same thing, basically like a proof of stake, except when you stake, you don't earn IOTA, you earn mana, which is then used to to power transactions, except unlike earning money, it rots over time, like it goes away over time. So it's sort of like, short term kind of thing. And then, like, if you don't produce the mana to power your transactions, you're going to have to pay someone who does, i.e. pay a miner to process your transactions, or pay a staker a fee. It's all like small, it all kind of ends up in the same way for that. But yeah, it ends up in these kind of situations because you say, I don't want to have fees. It's kind of interesting.
So it's just a twisted way of paying a taxation into the system with an encouragement to toward velocity, right? Either you get it in, get it done quick, or don't come at all. Essentially, is the message they're kind of sending with the network. So that takes away the store of value, right? Doesn't it, a little bit? It seems to me anyway, just from that kind of model, which is fine. You're making trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have a percentage of people who are certainly going to value that, and they're probably going to be people who are hypersensitive to transaction fees, which is people like merchants, people like poor people who do lots and lots and lots of little tiny transactions, streaming income type people, podcasters, pay to play kind of thing, gambling, a lot of little microtransaction kind of stuff can happen that way. But that's not everything, right? And that's, again, circle around to the maximalists. The maximalists don't see the value in that because they're thinking of hodling forever. Well, what the hell are you hodling for? Why? You're going to spend it someday? Okay. And you'll pay a giant fee when you decide to cash out, whenever you decide to cash out, if you ever decide to cash out, if there's ever any need to cash out, because you might just wrap it and collateralize it with some kind of loan at some point in the future because you never had to cash out because now you're worth $1 billion because Bitcoin's worth that much, whatever. I don't care. Those are just trade-offs.
So like I love seeing the end result of work. I love seeing the end result of people's design constraints taken to their logical conclusion, see how it works. Because it's just kind of like everyone's art is a reflection of them and their life story. It's kind of the same thing with these things, except what I like about this compared to art is subjective. It's just like, who am I to talk shit about the trees in your background and stuff, right? Like,
all value is belief.
Exactly.
Yeah.
However, on the other side, there is a very competitive, cutthroat, objective thing that's called the free market when you're trying to create money and technology to achieve things. Of course, it's still all about value, which is belief. However, it's a much more unified belief and not as individualized. Not as. And so, if you use, and I'm driving you nuts, but like if you use Lightning versus Nano versus Dash, let's just say those three, you're going to use those, and some people will just inherently prefer one over the other, but the objectively best user experience for the goal of transacting is going to, in a competitive environment where people want to transact, is going to pick a winner of those, not just, more people tend to be a favorite, like it'll be more specifically as a winner. So anyway, it's kind of interesting the way all that works. And like I am very looking forward to seeing, as I said, all these unique artwork expressions of code, but also I'm very excited to see which ones fail too, because art doesn't fail, but codes and projects do.
So you made a few interesting points there, and I'm going to rewind just a little bit to the objective side. First off, free markets. This is one of the points of my talk, my shitcoin talk,
Hmm.
is that markets are aggregated beliefs, right? It's all shit. It's all shit, and we all just believe in the shit to varying degrees. And the markets are where
So
we
are you
vote.
trying to say that therefore Bitcoin ABC really standard for Bitcoin Aggregate Belief Coin? Sorry, keep
I
going.
mean, that's one way to put it.
That was a dumb little joke. Keep going.
So in that vein, if you'll give me that markets are nothing more than aggregated beliefs, which it's very easy to go to a logical conclusion there, um, then winners are, and this is one of the interesting things that I have come to respect about the markets. Um, the winners are not always the best, and it sucks, but it's true. The best often lose, so
Hmm.
often, to what? What do they lose? To the one that has the greatest network effect. They always lose to the one that has the greatest network effect. And sometimes that happens to be the best, but not always. And I would argue maybe even not the majority of the time does the best win. It's just the one with the most network effect. And to date, which is kind of changing in our society, there have been a small group of people who can affect network effect, who can create or build or destroy network effect. And it's only in the past couple of decades, with the proliferation of YouTube and social media and platforms and all of this stuff into communities, where now communities are having their own communities on top of these platforms that exist outside of these communities. They're building and creating and growing and fractalizing and regrowing and restarting and dying and growing, and all this stuff is happening outside of these systems of control now. So network effect has become more and more organic over the past couple of decades. And because of that, maybe the best has a better chance of winning, because
Hmm.
the best will be defined by what all of these fractalized groups actually value and choose in their transactions. And that's why I really like to pay attention to network
Yeah.
effect and where it lives.
And network effect is essential to a certain extent the result of successful communication. And
Yes.
so if you have the best versus the second best and the second best wins, it's because their communication was more effective. And
And this is why transparency is so valuable,
yes.
because people are starting to value it.
And in the information age where there's just, it's so much easier to communicate. Maybe like it just, communication is everywhere. That is less scarce. It's more plentiful. The edge provided by effective communication is starting to shrink. It'll always be there, but it's
Hmm.
shrinking to where the best by other criteria has a better shot at actually making it through.
Exactly, and this is what I call the signal to noise ratio, right? I mean, it's not my idea, but it's how I
It's Vin
refer to
Armani's
it.
idea.
Yeah,
No, I'm
yeah.
just
Well,
kidding.
I don't know if it's even his. No,
It's just,
God.
I'm just, he makes that
uh,
comment. He likes to think he invented lots of things.
was it Seth Godin? I don't know.
Probably.
It's yeah, I don't know, but it's a really great idea, and it's one way to evaluate. You can take any scenario, any kind of communication, whether it's virtue signaling, a legal document, or a podcast like this, and you can say, okay, how much signal is there? How much noise in there is there? And any person can sit there and evaluate it to the degree that they have the capacity to understand it, to the degree that they can believe, and interpret and understand the values that are being communicated by that thing, that legal document, that podcast, that tweet, whatever it is. And there's going to be some level of signal and some level of noise, and it's going to be on a scale of 0 to 100% on both sides.
Yeah. So let me wait. I did get a comment here about Chuck could pass as Vin. They both don't have hair. So I should point out that you have a hell of a lot more hair than he does. Also, I need to point out that the voice is dramatically different. He has a high pitched, whiny, little annoying voice, and you have the voice of the gods. So don't even put them in the same sentence. All right. So we should probably
I don't know
wrap it
what you're
up.
talking about.
And we got one last hyper chat from Monkey Patcher. Hi, Monkey Patcher. which is a very pertinent question for our ages. He says, would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? Let me answer a variant to that question, if I may. Would I rather fight a horse-sized chuck or 100 chuck-sized horses? I'll take the former. Because a horse-sized chuck, as scary as that is, you imagine how massive. Just, I feel like you can avoid parts of it, maybe tire it out, whatever like that. But a bunch of chuck-sized horses, that's not like
you're talking about toy ponies.
yeah, but like 100 of them. That's a lot. Like that could kick
It is
my
a lot.
ass. Like I'd take my
fill a
size with
good-sized yard.
the horse-sized chuck. You know, to be honest. All right, let's wrap this up. Where can people find all your stuff and, you know, to tell them about shitcoin and all that stuff?
Yeah, so definitely check out shitcoin2021.com. And you know, there's a bunch of my favorite people in the crypto space are going to be there, and it's going to be a great event. And Float, my current employer, where I'm acting as chief experience officer, is holding an event June 3rd. You can register for that. Search around on social media for an Eventbrite ticket. And certainly check out float.app if you don't have an
I'm
account.
on there.
Set one up.
How's streaming these days, by the way?
It's gotten a little better. We just did an AMA last night with our team, and there was some buffering apparently in the Eurozone, but it seems to be okay. We're improving it now. And you know,
that sounds like a great dance album title, Buffering in the Eurozone. just rocking out to that stuff all the time, right? Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah, so and I'm on Float, Chuck_Williams on Twitter, Chuck Williams 37. And yeah, ping me on either of those. I occasionally check those out. Look me up on LinkedIn. I'm on there. And yeah, I'm that's got a lot of travel dates coming around the future, but mostly Float related. I'm very heads down on Float right now. And we're doing a rebuild and a relaunch, and a token launch is upcoming. You can actually check that out also, floattoken.com, FLOTE token.com. And we'll have an announcement at our party that's happening at Shitcoin 2021, June 3rd, next week. So yeah, excited about all that.
Fantastic. I did get a question that said about your talk. Will it be live streamed?
I have not gotten an answer on that. I asked, and it's still, I think, a maybe. I don't know if the organizers are going to live stream the contents, but I hope that it's going to be at least recorded.
Someone will be there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, it's been a unique and distinct pleasure, and we've run way over time, which is anticipated, which is why I scheduled you on a day when we don't have the Dash podcast immediately after.
Right on.
This time, just so you could ramble and
okay.
Yeah, get all the because you get to like deep territory. It's like some of this stuff you can't just talking about takes on the headlines and stuff. And then you go to like the cycles and corned beef and all this other stuff.
Right.
And like yeah, so yeah.
Cool.
Corned
well,
beef, by the way, for those
time,
who don't know, is the little in joke about when he says all value is belief. I say all value is corned beef. Because it sounds similar and just to be silly. So that's what corned beef means. All right. Thanks, everyone. Next week, I don't remember who is on either podcast at this moment. But next week, there will be 2 podcasts. Chuck will not be a guest on either of them. Sad face. But he may be in the live chat, or he may be in the after party, or whatever else. Thanks again for coming on, Chuck. Everyone, go to float.app. Check that thing out. Check all the improvements as they come out. Keep tabs on them. And all that other good stuff. And I will see you guys next week.
Thanks, Joel.